In 1973, Pete Townshend snapped. He didn't just smash his guitar, he turned on his own bandmate right in front of BBC cameras. Townshend kicked over Keith Moon's drum kit, hurled a cymbal toward crew members, and flipped off the producer with a cold, empty stare. This wasn't rock theater. This was a man at his breaking point. That outburst got The Who banned from the BBC for 8 long years, cutting them off from Britain's most powerful stage. But what pushed Pete Townshend so far? Behind closed doors, the band was falling apart. Betrayal, addiction, and a toxic feud that nearly destroyed one of rock's greatest groups forever. And the BBC meltdown? That was only the beginning. In 1966, The Who owned England. Fans worshipped them. Critics adored them. Their singles kept climbing the charts week after week. But behind that success was a storm waiting to explode. During a live TV performance, Keith Moon and John Entwistle showed up late. They'd been filming with a member of the Beach Boys. As cameras started to roll, Pete Townshend didn't grab his guitar to play it. He swung it, right at Moon's head. The blow left Moon bleeding. This wasn't staged chaos. It was a real assault on live television. Backstage, Moon and Entwistle quit the band, and at least for a week. For 7 days, The Who simply didn't exist. When they came back together in Portsmouth, nobody apologized. They just played like nothing happened, burying wounds that would soon rip open again. Townshend, obsessed with art and control, saw Moon's reckless humor as undermining everything he was trying to build. Meanwhile, Roger Daltrey fought him on the band's direction. Creative ambition versus commercial success. Keith Moon's antics only added fuel to the fire. Fans cheered when he drove a Lincoln Continental into a hotel pool. But behind the headlines, the band was paying the price. Literally. By 1967, Moon's destruction had cost The Who over $30,000 in damages, more than some members earned that year. These weren't just crazy rock stories. They were warning signs, cracks forming in a band built on chaos. Then came the financial disaster. In 1971, Roger Daltrey opened a single folder that was supposed to hold The Who's financial records. It was a sad stack of random receipts. Despite millions in sales and sold-out arenas, the band was broke. Their manager, Kit Lambert, had been quietly spending band money on failed art films, including one called The Committee that burned through their entire 1970 tour income. Even worse, Lambert had signed a disastrous publishing deal, one that gave away 50% of the band's royalties instead of the usual 25%. That single contract cost The Who roughly $750,000, a fortune in the early 70s. When Daltrey demanded answers, Lambert couldn't explain where the money had gone. A chair flew across the room. The band fired him and his partner, Chris Stamp, on the spot. But by then, the damage was done. They owed massive back taxes, unpaid bills, and had no clear record of what they were even owed. Townshend's grand concept Lifehouse, meant to be a multimedia masterpiece, had to be scrapped because they couldn't afford it. Instead, they recorded the pieces that survived and called it Who's Next. It sold over 3 million copies, but it was born out of ruin. Even their lawsuits against their ex-managers drained more cash. By 1976, The Who were playing massive stadium tours just to pay off old debts, and then came the breaking point. If you don't want to be in this band, then leave. Roger Daltrey's words echoed through the studio walls during one infamous 1973 meeting. What should have been a celebration turned into a screaming match. Townshend wanted a year off to develop his new concept album, Quadrophenia. Daltrey refused. They needed money, not another expensive art project. The band was broke again, $500,000 in back taxes, $15,000 a week in expenses, and no cash flow. Recording sessions turned into battlefields. One argument over a single vocal take dragged on for 16 hours, costing thousands in studio time. At one show, the tension literally stopped the concert mid-song when Townshend and Daltrey began arguing on stage. Yet Quadrophenia somehow made it through. It cost $300,000 to make, triple the budget of most albums then, and sold over 1 million copies. It was both a creative triumph and a personal defeat. Their friendship was fractured beyond repair. Then came the tragedy that would change everything. By 1975, Keith Moon's body was giving out. The man once celebrated for his wild drumming now needed roadies to carry him to the stage. At one Boston show, he collapsed mid-song. Doctors warned him that his liver was that of a 60-year-old alcoholic. Moon began taking heminevrin, a sedative meant to help with withdrawal, but he mixed it with alcohol. It was a fatal mistake. On September 7, 1978, Keith Moon was found dead in his London flat. He was just 32 years old. The coroner called it an accidental overdose. The band lost more than a drummer. They lost their heartbeat. As Pete Townshend later said, "We didn't just lose a drummer. We lost our chaos. We lost our danger." In 1981, The Who tried to move forward with a new drummer, Kenny Jones. But in Townshend's own words, "It doesn't sound like us anymore." Their new album sold well but lacked the spark. The wild, unpredictable energy of The Who had become rehearsed, professional, and safe. Their tours became obligations, not creative expressions. By 1982, Townshend quit. No announcement, no farewell, just silence. Years later, The Who would reunite, but now as something different. A legacy act, a museum piece of their former selves. Townshend said it best in 2002, "We're a jukebox now. The creative Who died with Moon." And yet, somehow their music lived on. Who's next? Quadrophenia, Tommy, albums born out of chaos and conflict, became immortal. They sold over 100 million records and inspired generations, but the cost was enormous. Addiction, betrayal, lawsuits, burnout, and death. The very chaos that made their art great was the same chaos that destroyed them. That's the cruel truth of rock and roll. The danger that creates brilliance is often the same force that tears it all apart. By the late 1980s, The Who had become something they once swore they'd never be: safe, predictable, and dependent on the very nostalgia they used to despise. Pete Townshend had once said rock was supposed to be rebellion. But now rebellion was replaced with routine. The same songs, the same set lists, the same encores that had once been unpredictable bursts of chaos. Fans still packed stadiums, but even the diehards could feel it. Something had changed. The danger was gone. The spontaneity had died with Keith Moon. In interviews, Townshend's words grew sharper, more cynical. He said he felt like a museum curator, preserving relics of a wild youth he no longer recognized. Roger Daltrey, meanwhile, leaned into the nostalgia. He embraced The Who's legacy, even if it meant replaying the past over and over again. For him, the fans deserved that. They had stayed loyal through every fight, every loss, every tragedy. But for Townshend, the endless reunion tours felt like a betrayal of what they once stood for. He wanted to move forward, to create, but he was forever tied to the chaos they'd left behind. Still, The Who's impact never faded. Their music became the soundtrack of rebellion for generations who hadn't even been born when they first smashed guitars on stage. Teenagers in the 2000s were discovering Baba O'Reilly and my generation like it was brand new. Their message, that frustration, that raw energy, still resonated decades later. But behind the legend was the human cost. Keith Moon was gone. John Entwistle would follow in 2002. Found dead in a Las Vegas hotel room on the eve of a tour, his heart failing from years of excess. The irony was impossible to ignore. Another life taken by the same lifestyle that made The Who legendary. Once again, the band was left to pick up the pieces. At Entwistle's funeral, Daltrey gave a eulogy that silenced the crowd. He said, "We weren't just a band. We were brothers who destroyed each other and still found a way to play again." And maybe that was the truth of The Who. Not perfection, but survival. Townshend and Daltrey continued on. Just the two of them, touring into their 70s. Some fans criticized them for carrying on without half the original lineup. Others saw it as something almost heroic. Two old lions refusing to give up the roar. Even now, their concerts end the same way they always did. Daltrey screams the final line of "Won't Get Fooled Again," and Townshend smashes his guitar. One last echo of the chaos that built The Who. Because maybe that's what their story was always about, how beauty can come from destruction, how art can be born from disaster, and how even when everything falls apart, the music somehow survives.